Hi, it's Gemma Taylor from the National Science Learning Centre. I'm the lead for Technology Teacher CPD, and today we're going to be looking at creating buttons. So I'm going to start by changing my sprite into a button. So I'm going to look at the costume and delete one I don't want. I'm going to go through and find myself a button. So if I go to Things in my library, what I can choose is a button here. I'm going to go back to my original sprite and delete it, so I'm just left with the button I want. To remind me that this is a button, I'm going to add some text. So, text that says button on there, and let's move the text and put it in place. Fantastic, so now we've got a button on the page. I'm going to be using this button as a button to initiate something to happen in the programme. So I'm going to put my sprite button in the corner, so it's out of the way of the play. And we're going to write some script. Now the script I'm going to use is going to show when I click that button, so it shows me, the user, that I've clicked it. So to do that, what I'm going to need is this block here which says when sprite is clicked. And what we're going to do is underneath that we're going to put some code which is going to make something happen when the sprite is clicked. If I go back to costumes again, what I can do is I can create a second costume for my button, and that second costume I can switch with the first, and that will show when the button's been switched. So if we duplicate, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this fill button here, use the colour red, and I'm going to fill all the text. So now I've got two different costumes that I can use. Using the look section here, what I can do is when the sprite is clicked, I'm going to ask it to switch to button 2. If we go back to this, button 2 is A2, let's just change that so we get it right. And button 1 is normal. Okay, going back to the script, so we're looking at having red when the sprite's clicked. Let's run the program, press it, goes red. Fantastic. What I'd like is for the sprite, this button sprite, to have a reset, so it goes back after a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a wait button here, go back to look, and we're going to switch the costume back to normal. So let's run that. But when I run it, it seems to be red. So what I need to have a bit of code that when the program starts, tells that button to always go back to that starting image. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a little block in there that shows normal. So now when we click the flag, it will go to normal, then we'll go through the system. So reset, fantastic, press the button, red, and back again. I'm just going to make that a little bit quicker. Reset, click the button, it's worked. So another way of showing when you've pressed a button is to use a colour effect, or what I'm going to change this to is a fisheye. So what we're going to do now is when we run the program and click it, we're going to create a fisheye effect. Let's put 17 in. Now you can see the button lifts up. Fantastic. Let's try a bit bigger. Brilliant. So yes, you can change the colour. Another way of doing it is to add a colour effect. Now just like before, I want to reset to normal, so we're going to have let's have a clear graphic effects, reset, press the button, fantastic. I need to have a wait, and then I'm going to borrow that clear graphic effects, and let's try that one more time. Brilliant. Now we've got a button that changes and lets us know when we're using it. So what can we do with that button? Well, a really useful thing to do with it is to broadcast with it. So if I go to events, there's some buttons here. 1, 2, 3, which all are linked to broadcast. So broadcast is basically having a tannoy and shouting something, and all of the sprites that are in this program and the backdrop will be listening. It's a code word. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a system where when that sprite is clicked, it's going to broadcast a message. We're going to write a new message, and it's going to be hello. Okay, so these blocks here, I'm not going to use this and wait, but I am going to use this block. I'm going to use it with a different sprite though. So we're going to create a new sprite. Let's have a polar bear. So now we've got two sprites on the screen. So what I'm going to do with this sprite is I'm going to use that when I receive button. So that polar bear's sitting on the stage, waiting. When that button gets pressed, it broadcasts hello, and the polar bear listens to it. So when the polar bear hears hello, what I'm going to get it to say is quite simple: hello. So the polar bear's not doing anything until I press the button, then it says hello. And we can do that with as many sprites as we want. That message doesn't have to just work for one sprite, it will carry across. So if we go back to events, and when I receive hello, we can make it move, we could make it glide. Let's make it glide to 221. Let's play that again. When I press the button, so we're controlling multiple sprites with the same button. If we go to my blog, you can see some ideas of how you can use that. So we're going to go to my WordPress blog and go to the menu and click Science and Scratch. I've used the same system to create some science projects that you can use in school using that broadcast function and that button function. So clicking on the images will take you to the Scratch page. It's the community site, you can get access to this and you can see the code as it's working. So I press go. What I've done here is I've used the buttons to alter the backdrops. So as you press each button, it creates a little storyboard scene, altering the backdrop and creating an animation. If we look inside, what I've done there, so when the code starts, there's 5 different backdrops that we're using, and what I've done is as each button is pressed, it switches the backdrop, and as each backdrop changes, it creates a little animation. So other things that you can do. This is a body parts quiz that I created. How this works is if you click on the body part, it will tell you the name of it. These are all buttons, and there's a reset button here. If we have a look inside that one, what we're doing is broadcasting show elbow when I click on that elbow button. And when I broadcast show elbow, if the elbow sign receives show elbow, it will sign it on here. Looking at the reset button, when I click on reset, it broadcasts the reset, and on reset it hides all of these different sprites. So exactly the same way, using a button, addition of using a broadcast. Well, thank you very much for watching this video. We've still got a video on sensing to come, and there'll be more on Makey and Picoboard in the future. Go to my blog, find out about the other files that are there, investigate the different ways of doing things, and if you've got any suggestions, feel free to catch me on Twitter.